If this country sets its sights on growing at a faster rate, we could do it. And if we did, we would create $1 trillion of additional revenue for government over a 10-year, on the 10th year alone. If we grew at 2% more, we would create a Germany in the 10th year of incremental economic activity. Over $4 trillion of economic activity. Do you think that we'd be moping around thinking the future is not as bright as today if we had that kind of economic growth? Don't you think incomes would begin to rise and people would feel comfortable that they could take a risk, start a business, dream the biggest possible dreams, and be successful as Americans have done generation after generation? To do that, we can talk about it and yearn for it, or we ought to maybe advocate positive policies to make it happen. All but our president and his most fervent supporters know that we must fix our entitlement system before it overwhelms everything else. There's no way to invest in the long-term things that create sustained economic growth unless we begin to be grown-up about fixing our entitlement system. We'll have to wait until President Obama leaves the stage, but we need to be real with the American people that this is not sustainable. We must repeal Obamacare and replace it with a consumer-directed, market-oriented policy. We need to reform the most complex and counterproductive tax code for corporations and individuals in the world, and the same goes for the most complex and unsustainable regulatory system in the world as well. To be young and dynamic again, we have to be young and dynamic again. And that means we should consider immigration reform not as a problem, but a huge opportunity for us to be able to create an economic strategy around immigration. This last week I made some statements about immigration reform. Apparently generated a little more news than anticipated. You know, I've been saying this for the last 3 or 4 years. Said the exact same thing that I've said regularly. And the simple fact is there is no conflict between enforcing our laws, believing in the rule of law, and having some sensitivity to the immigrant experience, which is part of who we are as a country. And it makes no sense. It is not an American value to allow people to stay in the shadows. It makes no sense for a valedictorian who's lived here for 15 years, as I just learned today, yet another one at Miami Beach High School, a valedictorian, the best baseball player on the team, who came in 5 years old, that wouldn't, I don't even know if he speaks Spanish, to go back to his native land, that we say, no, you're not worthy of being successful in our country. If our country is to be successful, everybody in our country should be successful as well. And so comprehensive immigration reform is part of the answer. The system is broken right now. Perpetuating a system that's broke won't solve our problems. Fixing it and making it an economically driven system will be part of the catalytic converter for sustained economic growth. Our energy policy needs to be based on amazing American ingenuity and innovation and technology and North American resources. For the life of me, I have no understanding of how it could be where you have oil and gas resources in your neighborhood, not this state, but next door. Rob, I hope that you are strongly supportive of eliminating this moratorium and have the courage to recognize the high-wage jobs that go along with this. Check Pennsylvania out. Check Oklahoma out. Check Texas out. Check their unemployment rates out. And it is due to this revolution that is taking place where we have a lower carbon footprint, where we're investing in our own future and creating high-wage jobs along the way. Never bet against American innovation to solve problems. Never. It is the source of not just our pride, but it's the source of our future. And in this pessimistic world right now, we discount the ability of people dreaming those dreams, maybe in their garage or interacting in a small business to create disruptive technologies that will lead the world. And finally, we need to transform our education system because in a right-to-right society, everybody needs the power of knowledge to be successful. Today, if you're born poor, there's a higher probability that you'll stay poor than any time in modern history. And if you're born rich, it's likely that your family will stay rich. That is not the America that will create a dynamic response that will be growing in the future. An America that is successful assures that every child that has the God-given ability to learn does so. And that means a total transformation of our education system. Candidates for governor, members of the legislature, when you get control, be big, be bold, change the system, make it child-centered, not adult-centered. Focus on the learning gains of each and every child. Break up the monopolies. More school choice, higher standards, more accountability. A focus on early childhood learning. This notion that some kids can learn and some kids can't, and there's nothing we can do about it, dooms us as a nation. If we reject that and believe, as I do, and I hope you do as well, that every child can learn, then we'll organize ourselves in a completely different way, yielding a better result. If you want to see where that happens, look to places like Florida, where we've led the nation in learning gains because we challenged the establishment, we challenged the unions, we challenged the adults, and the adults modified their behavior, and today students are learning at a great rate. The gains in Florida exceed the nation, and there's much more that has to be done there, but there's a lot that needs to be done here in Connecticut and across the country. So we can do this, but the one thing that we have to do is to focus on winning. Winning matters. Making a point is not as important anymore as winning. Winning matters. Because when you win, and you do it in a principle-centered way, and you do it in a hopeful, optimistic way, you actually have a chance to lead. And if you have a chance to lead, you can persuade people that there's a different way and a better way of doing things. And so winning starts in 2014 by electing a Republican governor here in Connecticut and Republican governors across the country. The last 3 weeks I've been to Santa Fe, New Mexico, where Susana Martinez, in a blue state, blue, just as blue, maybe not quite as dark blue, but blue, has a 60% approval rating, is likely to win in a landslide election. And she has challenged the orthodoxy of New Mexico politics. And guess what? They're cutting taxes, not raising taxes. They're creating reserves when they had none. They're reforming the education system. They're building a better business climate. The same can be said about Brian Sandoval in a purple or blue state, Nevada. The same can be said about Barry Fallon, which has an unemployment rate of about 3 or 4%, where they're cutting taxes. The same can be said about my own state of Florida, where Rick Scott has cut the debt in Florida by $400 million. He hasn't raised that, he's cut it. And now employment in Florida is growing. The states that have smaller government and smaller taxes and less regulation create the jobs, and they also are the recipients of the bad decisions made in other states. And I apologize, but there are a whole lot of people that should be in this room tonight that are in my home state. They're in my home state. And you can't blame them. Because y'all may be coming too, sooner or later, once you elect a Republican governor and change the course of this state. The final thing I'll say is that for those that think it's impossible, I meet too many people across the country that honestly believe that we can't resolve these problems. In fact, I don't know if you saw it after the president won re-election. During the interim between his victory and the inauguration, one of his deputy chiefs of staff, I believe, was quoted as saying that even Lincoln would have a hard time working with this Congress. As though, the dog ate my homework kind of attitude. That there's no way that you could work together or forge a consensus or find solutions to these problems. That somehow it's just done. That our country's on this track and there's nothing you can do about it. Well, I would argue, first of all, the notion that the Civil War compares to anything that we have today is a little over the top, for starters. And I would argue that great leaders have always emerged in American history to begin to forge that consensus, to put us in a different direction. Leadership matters a lot. Leaders don't always do victory dances on top of people when they have a victory. They actually dust the vanquished up, pat them on the back and say, what can we do together to try to find a solution to something else? Leaders have the ability to have humility, to share in the credit. And not take credit for everything, but share in the credit so people feel that their value, their worth is important. Leadership is emboldened, is embedded in the notion of building trust first, having a personal relationship with people that may not agree with you. Leaders actually get outside their comfort zone and make their case to people that may not just agree with them. Too many people now in our political process are too comforted with preaching to the choir, talking to themselves, getting their views validated, and not having the tolerance of other people's views. True leadership is the opposite. And that's what we desperately need in Washington, D.C. We have it across the country. We have it in our community groups. We have it in our families. We have it in our businesses, and we need it in Washington. And if we have that, this country will be young, dynamic, vibrant, and emerging again. And there will be nothing that will stop us. That is why being involved in politics is important. And that's why I appreciate the fact that this is important. God bless you all.